If you're not making any progress healing from the effects of a traumatic childhood, it's very likely that everything you were told about how to do it is wrong. That's what I'm saying. It's wrong. And I want to show you what I've learned to be the 5 crucial phases of healing from complex PTSD. All right? Because the dominant cultural idea about what counts as childhood trauma, what symptoms can be attributed to that, and what to do about it is way out of date. I'm Anna Runkle, also known as the Crappy Childhood Fairy, and I teach a new approach to healing trauma, one that just might be simpler for you to use and follow than what you're relying on now. If you sought help for your childhood PTSD, you were probably encouraged to spend a lot of time talking to a professional about what happened, telling the story. And I know a lot of people need to do that at least once. And I occasionally hear from people who say that in itself was very helpful. But if you were one of the many people with childhood trauma where talking about it week after week just brings up anger and pain, you were then probably encouraged to then start taking medication. And I occasionally hear from people who say that's what helped them move forward. But if you're like me, expecting those 2 things to solve the problem not only didn't heal anything, it took you down and got you stuck, not feeling better, not handling life better. And then, because we keep hearing how, therapy and medication, it's so great and it works, that's what you do, and it's not working for you. So not only aren't you getting better, but you're feeling like something extra is wrong with you since all this wonderful help isn't helping you. But what if that whole approach, at least for you, is just wrong? And there's a better way, because everything good in life depends now on finding what does work for you. All right, so to point the way forward, I'm about to outline for you 5 crucial stages of recovery. And this is not just based on what has worked for me personally. I've worked with thousands of other people, showing them my techniques, teaching principles that may sound at first kind of counterintuitive, and reading and learning what researchers are discovering about the nature of trauma and what's really going on in the brain, because that is where, in my experience, healing has to begin. You can't intellectually figure out your own healing with a brain that's giving you wrong signals because your CPTSD isn't treated. It's a vicious cycle, right? So you'll hear me say both CPTSD and childhood PTSD, and they're not exactly the same thing. Childhood PTSD is a subset, but it's a term that almost everybody understands. So you start with brain healing. And when that started for me, I had the astonishing experience of just popping out of my trauma state. At first, it was just like little periods of time, and then it got longer and longer. And then it was enough to start healing the other effects of trauma. And it's necessary to do that healing if you want to stay healed and change your life. And now working with other people, I've seen hundreds and hundreds go through a very similar process, a path that's both steady, it goes forward slowly and steadily, and it's also punctuated with dramatic steps forward. And early on, there's often this kind of like popping out of it, an epiphany. It's a realization or a little burst of healing that happens when you suddenly release an old and wrong idea that's blocking you from the path that's now going to take you to that place of ease and confidence and possibility. It sounds good, right? If you're skeptical, that's good. That's right and appropriate, because healthy boundaries mean you shouldn't let anyone override your best judgment about how to heal, especially people on YouTube, right? But just so you can assess my approach, I'll lay out for you the 5 crucial phases of healing. And you can incorporate this into all the good stuff you're already doing, and you don't have to change anything. Or if you don't have anything that's working for you yet, you can just make this what you're doing and see if this works. All right. So the first phase of healing is to realize what trauma is actually doing to you. Now, obviously, everybody's different, but the effects of abuse and neglect in childhood tend to follow very common patterns. They're so common that I think you'll find it comforting, really, that no, a lot of your challenges and mistakes are not some kind of personal failure. And when you learn the common effects of trauma, and this is something I teach in all my courses, you're going to find how many of your problems are normal. You can totally let go of all the blame because it's not your fault. And you don't have some kind of crazy preference for drama. You're not seeking out people who hurt you, and you're not trying to recreate your childhood. Have you ever been told these things? I mean, really. The common symptoms of CPTSD from childhood are normal responses to abnormal circumstances during your developmental years. You did not do this to yourself. Yes, there are psychological elements, and those can in turn turn into self-sabotaging behaviors. And I deal with that a lot too in my courses and coaching programs. But at its root, CPTSD is a neurological injury that disrupts brain and body systems. And then that in turn affects your health. It definitely affects your health. It can cause chronic disease. It can cause learning problems, relationship problems, which you've noticed, financial problems, depression, anxiety, addiction. And this is a big one that gets overlooked, for example. It can make it impossible to make clear-headed decisions right when you need to make a clear-headed decision, when you're stressed. Now, there's a lot of wrong information out there. You see it on TV. It just drives me crazy. In movies and TV, a traumatized person finally just talks about it to some therapist or friend, and just because they talked about it, everything magically goes away and they're better. And I wish it were that easy, right? And it's a little different than that. But of course, it looks like it should work from the outside. It looks like we just aren't seeing that we're traumatized, or we're just not getting something. It looks like that because we say one thing, but then our actions are kind of different. We probably seem like we're deluded when we're taking action. And we keep making the same self-sabotaging mistakes over and over again, even though we said we wouldn't. So to someone who doesn't have CPTSD, it's easy to assume that this is some kind of decision we're making or a choice. And if someone believes that, then they kind of have to make it work for themselves by dressing it up with all kinds of psychological reasoning or rationales about why that would be. Oh, it's really just this. But, the telltale sign that an idea or assessment isn't really the right one in your case is that when you apply it, it just doesn't do anything for you. Results tell you something. There might be a tiny puff of belief or excitement when you first hear an explanation for why you're having problems. But when you give it a few days or weeks and you try the technique and then you see it doesn't work, well, there it is. It doesn't work. Now, knowing something, even if it's true, is not the same thing as having a solution. Especially, if it doesn't lead to your healing, it's not a solution. It might work for other people, but if it doesn't work for you, it's just an idea. And if your failure to respond to common treatment is making you then feel ashamed or different, then it's really important to internalize that whole thing, that treatment was supposed to work for you, it's a misunderstanding. It's wrong information. Let that come to you as a relief. You're normal. You're you. And that is the first crucial phase of healing. Now, the second phase is to understand the root cause of most of your symptoms, and that is something called dysregulation. Okay? Chronic stress and trauma in childhood can cause brain and nervous system changes that affect every system in your body. Those normally regulated systems become dysregulated. You'll hear me use that word all the time, dysregulated. There's emotional dysregulation. There's dysregulation of brain activity from a flowing pattern into a chaotic pattern. There's dysregulation of hormones and chemical signals that govern your immune system, your heart function, your lung function, your reproductive system, your metabolism, your attention span, your ability to stay calm and present and not melt down emotionally or totally space out at crucial moments. Now, in this stage of healing, you learn to notice when dysregulation is happening. What are the signs that you have it? What are the triggers that seem to set it off? And this begins a huge wave of growth for the people I coach. That's what it did for me too. They'll often say, dysregulation? Oh my God, that is what I have. That is what is throwing me off every time. And if you have that, that is very probably what's made it almost impossible to stop making those same mistakes or to solve the problems in your life that just seem to hang around and get worse, even though you're doing everything a person is supposed to do. It's the dysregulation. And guess what? You can learn to re-regulate. You can learn to do that. And it's strange at first, and it'll surprise the heck out of you to find that simple techniques can stop a trigger from turning into a big upset and then a full day or 3 days of dysregulation. You might still get dysregulated, but you'll notice it sooner and you'll turn it around more quickly, and then you can get back to being okay and doing what you're doing. When you're regulated, you're a lot less likely to lose your temper or have an anxiety attack or feel overwhelmed. Is that a big one for you? You have a way out from all that. And when you're free, so many things in life become possible. Now, I love teaching people about this in my coaching program because it's one thing to read about how to re-regulate or to watch a video about it, but being in a small group, just like connecting every week with people who know you, sharing what you're trying, what you're noticing, having people hear you and be happy for you, and sharing what they're discovering about what works. Well, I get to see this light go on in everyone's eyes like, that's it. One by one, they're getting it. We're not failures. We're not stupid. We're dysregulated, and this can be healed. And so that is the third crucial phase of healing, to learn to connect with other people. This is probably the single hardest thing because it's the worst impact area of childhood trauma on adults. Feeling like an outsider, for example, feeling like you didn't get the memo on how to act, or you're good at acting like you're fine, but you never feel like you're safe to be yourself. You feel lonely, even in crowds. And of course, romantic relationships, for so many of us, are dreadful or obsessive or non-existent, right? It's not supposed to be this way. I say it again and again, childhood PTSD is an injury to our ability to connect with people, and connection can be learned. Now, when you're more regulated, it's easier to connect, and it works the other way too. More connection helps you get more regulated. So the fourth crucial phase of healing is all about facing your own self-defeating behaviors. Like, do you ruin relationships with anger? Are you isolating? Do you have addictions or a problem with food and weight that's hurting your health? These are all trauma related, and a lot of traumatized people stay stuck with these problems all their lives. But when you're regulated and connected a little more, you can begin to change these things. And that's an honorable and holy project, to keep facing your own mistakes and making day-to-day changes in a positive direction. This is everything. This is where life starts to get much more open and much happier. And then comes the fifth crucial phase. And that's when you're able to shed your old limited idea of yourself, stuck in resentment or hopelessness, or identified with the trauma, or feeling paralyzed about taking action, or trying to please people who, come on, man, they're never going to be pleased with anything you do. This is the phase where you're able to discover who you really are, the real you, and the gifts that you were meant to bring into the world. You probably have inklings of what your gifts are, but the burden of CPTSD has been just too heavy to develop them, right? So in the intensive coaching programs we do here, we take people all the way through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the phases. And this is the greatest pleasure of all, is watching each person's power and their dignity be restored and start to shine, because they can see not just the old identity of someone who was hurt, but their true identity. They're people who can accomplish great things for the benefit of the world. And we get to watch as people come in with this kind of hard edge of feeling like life is meaningless and empty and threatening. And as they gradually sort of lighten up and drop the burdens and then start to shine like that, there's just nothing better. We have new group coaching intensives starting next month. And if you want information about that, or you want to make sure you get a spot, I put a link to that in the description section below. And there's other links there too that you might find helpful and relevant. And if you want to hear more of what I have to say about the old ways of treating trauma, and in particular, my own experiences when I was doing talk therapy, could be different than yours, but you can check out what happened to me and why it wasn't working for me in this video right here. It is one of my most popular and controversial, so check it out. You can see if you relate.